In today's video, I'm talking to lovely Maz, who has very kindly agreed to chat to me about why she decided to take her child out of school and try home education. If you're new to this channel, my name's Jenna. I'm a qualified primary school teacher, now full-time tutor. I chat to people about their experiences in education. If you like today's video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a supportive comment down below for Maz to read. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Lovely. Now, we actually know each other because one of your lovely children are in my home ed classes. So that's how we came to know each other. And that's why I asked you to chat to me today. And you very kindly agreed.
Oh, it'll be lovely. It'll be fab.
Lovely. So, first question then. Growing up, what was your own experience of education like?
Wow. So actually, when I started primary school, I actually still remember some of my primary school teachers. I had such a positive experience in education. And interestingly, Mrs. Cooper, who was my reception class teacher, was actually my dad's reception class teacher as well.
Oh, really?
So it was a very local primary school. We lived in the area that my dad grew up in. The teachers all stayed the same for a number of years, and a really, really positive experience. After primary school, obviously went to high school, and I went to one of the best high schools in the area. And I think that's where I started to have a little bit of a wobble. I was quite academic sort of growing up, but I think this particular school had such a big focus on, A star, it was A stars and A's. Now I think it's numbers now, isn't it? And so the GCSEs, you had to come out with the top GCSEs, and I was really, really bright, but there was also quite a lot of sort of competition within the family. So I had quite a lot of cousins similar age, and there was a lot of pressure, I think, from my parents to do really well. And I did do really, really well at school, and I really enjoyed like the social aspect. But in a way, I think my experience of education sort of later on, later in sort of high school, um, has really made me go for home education for my own kids. And so I think for me, some of the flaws in the education system showed very early on in my actual education.
Mm.
But I think going back to your question, my actual early years, I remember them so well, and I think I couldn't have asked for a better early years education, I think.
That's really good because that was the way that you used to have teachers in schools for years. And when I started in different schools, teachers never left. Like once they were in a school, they never left and they remembered the families, like you say, your dad.
Yeah.
Um, they taught different generations throughout. But then as I progressed, it was, I think the record or the information or the data showed it was teachers sustain a minimum of or a maximum of 5 years at the most.
Wow.
And then after that, they were burnt out and they were gone, which meant obviously a higher turnover in
Yeah. Yeah.
schools. And it's even higher now from what I'm seeing, like the data and that kind of thing. So that was interesting how it changed in secondary for you. So
Mm.
then when your children started school, how was that initially?
Really interesting actually, because when Sophia started school, it was during the pandemic. So I
Oh,
think it
okay.
was, so that was it. The pandemic hit in the March, wasn't it? So she was
Yeah.
still at preschool. And then she started primary school in September, and it was so different, honestly. It wasn't what we expected. We weren't allowed to drop it, but both of us weren't allowed to drop her off, her mum and dad. It was only
Oh,
one of us that were allowed on the playground. Um, and I personally know quite a few of the teachers at school, which made it a lot easier because obviously I knew where she was going, I knew who she was going to be with. But I just found it such a shock. It was such a culture shock going from what they like at preschool and nursery to that formal education, in the uniform, going off to school at the age of 4. Sophia's one of the youngest in the year as well. So
mm,
she was just tiny compared to the rest of them. But I think the sort of reception, year one, the initial start, it was absolutely fine. They are just they're playing, aren't they?
yeah,
Learning
the
through play.
playground curriculum.
Um, but I think I started to question a few things quite early on.
Mm.
Just like focus of what schools focus on these days. And I know it's difficult for sort of leadership within schools because there's so much, they're under so much pressure to deliver so much. But I started to realize very quickly that my children weren't being exposed to what they needed for the future. I feel as though schools at the moment are preparing children for the current sort of climate, what we are living like now. They're not really considering what the world that we're living in will be like in 15, 20 years' time.
No. I was having this discussion actually with someone in my family because, with AI and everything coming in
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
so many skills can be done on AI, even like writing. And I know one of your, Sophia does creative writing and things
Yeah.
like that. And, it's lovely to be able to write and be imaginative but a lot of that kind of stuff, children don't necessarily always need to be taught it anymore
Yeah.
because they can just get it. And that's what high school teachers are saying now. They're checking now for AI essays. They're having to put different procedures in place because of this.
Wow.
And like you say, like a lot of things that we're doing, like I remember going into year one and I was early years based, and there were like so much emphasis on random terminology, which to be frank, I've never used as an adult. I've never used fronted adverbials, and obviously we heard about pronouns and things like that now. But there's a lot of terminology when you look at grammar that you never
I
will
know.
use
I know.
ever in
I
education.
know.
So I do think there has to be a big look at curriculum and
Definitely.
change in that, because it's just like like other countries like Finland, Denmark, and all that kind of stuff are so far advanced. I read the other day that they don't get their children to read till they're like 8 years old, and
Yeah.
we get them at 3 years old. I
I
remember having
know.
to teach children to read at 3 years old because we had to have the data and we had to have the progress, which is such a backwards way of
Crazy. It
looking
really
at
is.
it.
It's great. And I think, the research is there to show that children will learn better at an age where the research suggests that you should start teaching them. But for some
Mm,
reason, we think that we should teach them sooner. And sort of reflecting on Sophia's earlier, she's quite academic. You know what she's like. She's
yeah.
quite studious. She will get on with what she needs to get on with. So I was quite fortunate in that sense. Obviously, Adam is now in reception, my younger one, and so he's still at school for now. I think we're going to take him out at the end of reception. But the difference in Sophia and Adam is huge. And Adam is now trying, well, he has to read, and we're trying to get him to read. But I'm sort of reluctant to do what school are asking me to do because I'm
Mm,
like, well, he's too young. Do you know what I mean? He's what one, he's not interested, and two, I know it'll come in time.
mm,
So I think getting that balance is quite difficult because obviously as a parent, you know what's best for your child, but I get that schools are in quite a difficult position as well. They've got to do what they've got to do.
mm.
Um, so yeah, I think it's just very interesting at the moment, the education
Yeah.
system.
I think lockdown has pushed home education a lot more, and
Yeah,
there's a lot more people now. Because I'll admit, when I was teaching, I did not even know about home education. I thought every child had to be in school. Like,
yeah,
I didn't know. I only learned about it because I became a tutor, and tutors were saying, "I'll get daytime work," and I was like, "Well, with who? Like, literally who?"
yeah,
But there is, and like you've probably seen the data coming out,
yeah.
10,000 more children being home educated, 20,000 more being home educated, and they're trying to go into families' homes. And I don't know how that's going to go down because that's not going to be popular
I
at all.
think I think it's like you say, there's been an increase since lockdown, and I think for us, we've been craving a lot more flexibility for some time now, and I
Mm,
think lockdown gave us a little bit of a snapshot of what is
mm,
actually
mm,
achievable. We're quite fortunate, me and my husband, that we can work from home if we wanted to, so we can support our children with the home education. And I just think the way home education at the moment is being perceived in the media,
mm,
um, is quite negative, and I
mm,
think people need to start looking at
mm,
why are people home educating and learning from home educating parents that actually can do it quite well and are doing it quite well, because for me, like the benefits outweigh any of
mm.
the sort of like the negative side that people talk about.
Yeah, because I know you saying that the narrative that's being pushed, because I read a Google article last night, I think, and every parent they spoke to said it was a short-term solution, that they were going to eventually they had to go back to school, the children had to go back to school. And I thought you haven't really spoken to home ed, like it's not a balanced
Yeah,
article. It's
Yeah.
fitting the narrative of what they want.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and like obviously, and there was ones from teachers commenting saying that, oh, it was a good idea that they knew how to teach. But even like people that don't teach, who aren't teachers, are very good at teaching. Like we've
Yeah.
seen it with teaching assistants and all
Yeah.
different roles. They're brilliant, but just because they don't have the qualification doesn't mean they can't do it. They just
Yeah.
don't want to spend that money
Yeah.
on a qualification and be stressed.
And I'm quite an advocate of learning through doing things.
Mm,
So although I agree, yes, you have to be taught the theory to a degree, like Sophia's really interested in science and experiments and things like
mm,
that. And I'm letting her ask all the questions and then telling her to go away and look for the answers. And that's how she's learning her science.
mm,
I mean, like at the age of 7, she's looking at the periodic table because we've been making potions through one of her
mm,
Christmas presents that she got. And she's been looking at little what's it called? Sodium something peroxide or something. And she was making some experiment, making a portion out of it. And I said, oh, why don't you look it up? And then that led to another question. Well, why does that make that if you mix them two together? And that's how we're approaching it. Like let her do the thinking. And I'm not a teacher. I don't have
mm,
the patience to be a teacher either. But we are very much letting her lead her education to a degree. And I
mm,
think because she's in control, she's more interested.
mm,
So going back to your question, like I'm not a qualified teacher. Obviously, she has got a number of tutors that do help her, like yourself. But yeah, it's very interesting in the sense that there is that narrative out there that home educators can't teach because they're not teachers. When actually, if I know quite a lot of home educating families whose children are doing their GCSEs at like the age of 13, 14 because they've had one-to-one learning like all their life. And I just think, wow, like what freedom is that going to give them? They're still doing the GCSEs and then they're going to have 3 or 4 years to get some work experience in, experimenting different fields before they actually decide what they're going to go into. I think
mm.
it's amazing.
Yeah, I think it's better to see both sides, like you say. So, obviously, start school now. Obviously, as time went on, things changed, and you had already noticed different things happening that you weren't 100% on what she was learning. What eventually then made you think, right, we need to make that change now? So, lockdown kind of showed you a glimpse
Yeah.
into the lifestyle, but then what then changed from it being okay to, right, we need to do something now?
So Sophia, the class that Sophia was in is, well, it is quite a difficult class. Very different mix of girls and boys. I think there was 23 boys, 7 girls. And then there was quite a few SEN needs that weren't being met just because of what the system's like at the moment.
Yeah.
The school weren't getting the funding. Um, Sophia was coming home saying certain things had happened. It wasn't being communicated very well between school and parents, and it felt a little bit like school were trying to hide what was going on in the class.
Mm,
Um, so when I questioned it with the head teacher, he did admit, I said, if I tell you what Sophia's told me has happened today, can you tell me whether it's true or false? He said, yes, that's happened. And basically there was an incident in class which could have turned into a safeguarding incident. And I won't go into it, obviously, but I just felt a little bit worried about her safety, really. Like, is she
mm,
safe in that class?
mm,
Um, and that was it. She came home, and the way she was talking about it, it's almost like it was normal. And I just looked at my husband and said, that's not a normal education. She shouldn't be exposed to that. And for me, I was thinking about what impact is that having on her emotional health as well,
mm,
her mental health and well-being. And we spoke to her about it, and it was very quick. Like we mentioned home education to her. She said, "Oh, I do like school, but I do like being at home. I would like to learn at home." Like she talked about lockdown. And then we thought it's quite a big decision. We don't want to just rush into it. And for around, I think it was about a month, we were asking her when she came home from school, what did you enjoy about school today? What didn't you enjoy? And we just sort of weighed it up that way. And we had like quite a few discussions 2 or 3 times a week with her, just sort of reflecting on what she'd put down. And then one day she just decided saying, are we doing it or not? Are we home educating? Because I really want to be home educated
I can
now.
imagine her saying that. We're
Yeah.
doing it. We're getting on with it.
And so it was actually just before Christmas, and my husband just said, well, we've done quite a lot of research into it. I'd been to quite a few home educating groups already. just to
Mm.
find out what was available. Chatted to a few parents, and we just said, right, okay. So we just sent the email. I spoke to the head teacher, and he was surprisingly quite supportive.
Oh, okay.
Um, and yeah, so then from January we've been home educating.
That's it. I like how you did so much research because I do get a bit worried sometimes because when I do look on some of the groups, some parents, it comes across that they just pull their child out and they say, what
Yeah,
do we do now? And that does panic me. I
yeah,
think if you are going to make such a drastic change, like you have to do the research because
yeah,
obviously it's your child's education at stake. So I think
absolutely.
that's really good the way you involved her. And every day you were like, well, positives, negatives. And then she kind of then, I presume, out what decided, well, there's more positives or there's more negatives,
Yeah.
or I want to try this, which I think is really good. But I think you do have to research anything in life, you have to
Yeah,
research it
yeah.
before
I
you
mean,
do
it's a
it.
big decision.
Mm,
It was a big decision, and we really wanted to make sure that even though it was a benefit, it was a decision that was going to benefit us. Hopefully, at some point, we'll be able to travel a little bit more. We wanted to make sure that it was the right decision for her. And I think for Sophia, when she was writing down some of the negatives about school, she was saying, "Oh, I wish we could do more." She loves science experiments. She talks about
mm.
science experiments all the time. She kept saying, "I wish we could do more of this. I wish we could do more of that." And we just sort of thought, well, we kind of do stuff like that every day, like when you're cooking, when you're baking, through the gifts that she receives for Christmas and birthdays. We could quite easily do that and then have some theory to back it up, and that would essentially be the science side. And then the other thing that made us do it was she was already having maths and English tutoring because of the situation with her class. They weren't actually
Oh,
getting
okay.
the education that they needed. And I sort of picked up on, well, so I'm the sort of parent where I do keep on top of things. And I thought, well, the national curriculum says that you should have learnt this by now and you haven't done. Why? So then I started questioning certain things. And then speaking to other parents in the class, they said, oh, no, my child said that they've not done that either. So I thought, right, okay, they're obviously not getting the education that they need because it's quite a disruptive class. So she started she started having tutoring. It was September, so the beginning of year 3. So when we were looking at how much is it going to cost us to have a tutor, that didn't really come into it because I thought we're already paying for a tutor, so it doesn't really make any difference. And yeah, she's continuing to have the tutoring and she's just thriving because she's getting that one-to-one. So that was another reason why we decided to go for it.
And so you obviously knew about home education kind of because of the lockdown, but was there anyone or anything that you saw that first sparked, oh, home education, or was it literally just lockdown?
Um, I'm trying to think. There was actually, who was it that I spoke to? It was a colleague at work, who has got 2 daughters who just weren't settling at all in school since lockdown. And she said, "Oh, I'm home educating now." And I looked at her, I said, "What do you mean you're home educating?" And she's just like, "Oh, I'm home educating. I've spoken to work and they're quite supportive." And she was talking about it, and I thought, wow, like you're actually home educating. And she said it's very different to what it was like in lockdown. Obviously, a lot of people look at lockdown as, oh, I
Mm,
couldn't do what you were doing in lockdown. And I was like, well, that's different because I
mm,
think there's this argument, isn't there, homeschool versus home educating. And then
mm,
homeschooling is obviously what we were all doing in lockdown. It was basically school but at home. Whereas home educating, I think, is quite a different concept because you are teaching them through your everyday life, but also delivering
mm,
some of what they need to know for the future.
mm.
And I think speaking to Jo, um, she just said, I'm getting, to spend so much more time with the girls. I'm so much happier. We don't have to do the school run anymore. And I just thought that school run, I hated that school run so much.
Mm.
And then I started looking into it a bit more. And she said, oh, join this group on Facebook. And it was a home educating group that gave a lot of advice and resources and things like that. And I think I was in that group for about a year.
Oh,
Just
that's interesting.
Yeah, I was just like reading people's posts. Obviously there were some negative comments as well, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then I was sort of trying to think, how would that fit into our lifestyle if we were to do that? So we did spend like a good, I'd say 9 to 12 months. Do we do it? Do we not? Researching, talking to other parents, doing a bit of research in terms of what's in our local area before we actually
Yeah.
made the change.
Oh, and was your husband on board initially?
Yeah.
Or yeah.
Yeah. So Nige is very much the same as me in the sense that we want that flexibility. he was a little bit apprehensive because he wanted to make sure it was the right decision for Sophia, and he was the one that actually said we need to do the asking her to write down what she enjoyed, what she didn't
Okay.
enjoy. So that was his idea, and actually it was a really good idea and did help us make
Yeah.
that decision. But he's really on board with it, and
Okay.
he's very much part of obviously her home
Yeah.
education. Oh,
Yeah, that's interesting. So, obviously it's been successful so far, you'd say.
yeah, absolutely. It's
Have
been
you
very
know? Oh,
different,
sorry. Carry
but
on.
very, very different to what we expected, I think. In my head, even though I knew that not everyone does the 9 till 10, we're going to do maths, 10 till 11, we're going to do English. I knew that we weren't going to do it like that, but I did expect some structure. Um, but it's just been so different. Obviously, we both work full time. And although we have days off during the week, Sophia's quite studious and she just, well, today I want to spend the whole day on maths. And
Uh,
we just sort of gone, oh, okay then. Like, it's just sort of gone out the window. So we're just sort of keeping a track of what she's doing. Sort of checking in during at the end of the week whether she's done what she's needed to do. But we're quite fortunate, I think, in the sense that she
mm.
knows what she needs to achieve and she will just go out and do it. So yeah, different to what we planned initially, but in a good way.
And have you noticed a difference in her?
Huge. Her confidence for one. I mean, she's always been quite a confident child, but she's quite quiet when she was at school.
Mm.
Um, and funnily enough, we went into school the other day and she came with me because I had Adam's parents' evening and she saw some of her previous teachers.
Oh.
Um, and they gave her a hug, and one of them said to me, I can't believe the difference in her in just a matter of months. I said, what do you mean? She was like, she's just so much chattier and she looks happier as well. And I just thought for a teacher, one of her teachers
Mm.
to say that and notice it, it really did touch me because I just thought it almost like gave me the reassurance that I have done the right
Yeah.
thing. But yeah, with regards to her confidence, things like we've been on quite a few home ed trips and she will just quite happily talk to people, whereas normally she would sort of shy away.
Yeah.
Things like going to the post office, she will come with me, she will do the shopping with me, and she's just happier, I think, just talking to adults. And she wasn't necessarily unhappy when she was at school. Um, but I think she's just getting more life experience, and that's definitely
Yeah.
building confidence.
Yeah. What has there been any challenges that you've come across that you didn't expect or didn't kind of think of?
I think trying to think with challenges. It is difficult with us obviously both working full time, trying to keep on top of
Yeah.
everything. I am I like to know that she's up to where she's meant to be. And I'm quite an organized person as well. So I think sometimes when I've had a really busy week at work and my husband's really busy with work as well, and we're trying to get prepared for the week ahead,
Mm.
whether that's worksheets or just writing down what she wants to cover, that kind of thing, it can be quite frustrating. So I think the time management we definitely need to become better at, but it's not always easy when you're working full time and you've got
Yeah.
a child at home educating. So I think for me, in terms of challenges, it's probably expectation, working on my expectations,
Mm.
maybe trying to relax a little bit.
Mm.
I would say. I think it's me that's got the challenges rather than Sophia with the home education. But I think with regards to her, no, I think we're quite fortunate in the sense that we found tutors like yourself quite soon into her journey, who've
Mhm.
been amazing, really, really supportive, and yeah, it's been fab so far.
That's good. I did have another question and it's totally gone from my mind. I'll come back to that. So, if another parent, was considering home education, what advice would you give them?
I think it goes back to the research. I think you
Mm.
can't, like yourself, I've seen in quite a few groups where people say, oh, there was an incident at school today, and that was on the Friday, and then on the Monday they've sent an email to say the child's not returning to school, and that's the end of it. But they don't have a plan.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that would scare me, and I think that would have a detrimental effect on the child because you've not involved them in the decision making, and
Mm.
there's just no plan. So I think the first piece of advice would be is talk to other home educating parents that are in a similar situation like yourself.
Mm.
I mean, I spoke to quite a few who were they didn't work. they didn't need to work. They were, one of the parents was on a good salary, so the other person don't need to work. And I just thought, well, I can't compare us because you have, you can be with your child all the time. So then I started looking more, and I looked for parents who had sort of similar lifestyles to us, and I talked to them. Um, yeah, I think it would go back down to the research and the planning. You have to know what your plan is going to be when you start home educating, and part of that
Mm.
planning has to be your research, what is out there. And I think another piece of advice would be the home educating groups local to you. I think they are so valuable and so important because
Yeah.
they themselves will know what you are going through, and just provide such valuable support.
I've found quite scary in some groups, they'll be talking about like, authorities and, because there's only legally so much they can do, but some parents are really overwhelmed, really stressed and doing this, that, and everything paperwork wise when they don't need to.
Yeah,
But it's just normally people that don't understand home education in higher jobs, that kind of
yeah,
thing. So, like with those groups, it is really good just to make sure that, yeah, you're doing the right thing, but you're not being made to do things that are not appropriate at
yeah.
all.
Yeah. I mean, we're quite fortunate. Our local authority is so supportive of home
Mm.
education. When we started home educating, they got in contact and they said, oh, we've heard from school that you wanted to home educate. We just wanted to get in contact. And they sent us a list of resources that they
Oh,
supply
wow, that's
home
good.
educating parents. Yeah, there was a lot through like local libraries, and they were like, we put on, these workshops and these groups if you ever want to come along. They did ask for a report, just in the sense that what are you planning on doing with Sophia? And within 3 working days of sending that off, they said, we're really happy to hear what you're doing with her, and we hope she enjoys her education. See you in 12 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
So
it was
that's what's
brilliant.
meant to happen. That is
Yeah,
like the expectation. But
yeah,
some families I've read about, they've got portfolios because they
I
want
know.
pictures and annotations and
And you don't have to. You don't have to supply that's
no.
child's work. That's your child's property, and I don't think people realize that. But I think home education is quite a scary thing for families to do, and I think
Mm,
it's local authorities. I think need to work on working with families, that collaborative working with families, and that'd make their job easier as well.
yeah,
Then I do understand that local authorities are just under a lot of pressure at the moment as well.
yeah,
So it's sort of meeting in the middle, isn't it?
yeah. There's a lot of public service jobs really under a lot
Yeah,
of pressure, and we're
yeah,
going very admin based and taken away from the actual job itself, which
yeah.
is such a shame. So, another reason I asked you to come on was because of your incredible Instagram page that you shared with me a few months ago, maybe a
Yeah.
while ago now, and I've of
Yeah.
course followed, and it's brilliant. So tell us what it's called, tell us all about it, why you decided to start it, and how it's developed.
So my page is Grow with Maz. And I suppose it started again during lockdown. So obviously everyone
Oh
in lockdown
yeah.
went crazy with gardening and growing their own veg. Now I've always been into gardening from quite a young age, probably like 18, 19. But growing up we never had a garden.
Oh,
Um
that's interesting.
yeah, it is. And I sort of reflect on my journey. I'm like, a lot of people will say, oh, well, I always gardened with my parents, or I always had my grandma's garden. And I just thought, well, I didn't. We grew up in a terraced house. We had like a little backyard, and there was none of that. And for me, it started with houseplants.
Yeah,
And then, yeah, so me and my husband, we got our first house, and they had like a little south-facing garden. And we just thought, oh, what can we put in here? And then slowly, I've just sort of got into
yeah,
gardening. And then it must have been 2020 that I tried to grow some chilies. It was chilies and lettuce.
yeah.
I don't know why I tried growing chilies because we don't even eat chilies, but I just
I
wanted to grow
can't eat them. I'm so bad with spicy stuff.
but lettuce, we eat a lot of lettuce and we like salads. So I thought, let's grow some lettuce. So we had like a little trug in the garden that just had a bit of lettuce in it. And then, yeah, then obviously in lockdown, we found we had loads more time. So I got my name down on the local allotments list, and I waited a year, and I
Oh,
emailed
wow.
them saying, I've been on the waiting list a year and I've still not got an allotment. And they were like, well, you're like 340 something on the list. And I was like, wow, like I'm never getting an allotment at this rate. So I waited another 6 months, and I just thought, I'm not having this, because I knew a few people that had allotment plots
Right.
on the same site. and they were saying, well, there's loads of vacant plots, so I don't know why they're not offering you a plot. So then I rang up and basically complained, and I got given the contact name and address, email address for someone higher than this lady that I spoke to. And I just basically said, I'm here, ready and waiting to give you some money to rent an allotment plot, and I know you've got loads of allotment plots free, and I want one. And I think they just
What?
shut me up. They just wanted to shut me up, and they were like, "Can you come and view one on Saturday?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, I will do." And I took it, and it was huge, this plot, but the weeds, honestly, Jenna, they were like this high. I didn't actually know how big this allotment plot was, but I just saw it. I was like, yeah, that's fine. It's an allotment plot. I'll take it. Um, Came home and I told my husband, and he said, "All right, when do we get the keys?" I said, "Oh, they want us to go back on Saturday to have a look at it." And he came with me, and he went,
What have you
"Why did
done?
you put this on?" Yeah, he was like, "Why did you say yes?" But honestly, I think it's one of the best things we've ever done, because slowly we have just chopped everything back, and we've put structures in place, and we've got this allotment plot. And I think I can probably say it was last year that it was not ready, but it looking more like an allotment.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to sort of have a journal and share my journey with people, because honestly, for my mental health, that allotment has been an absolute
I can
lifesaver.
imagine.
Lockdown was really, really difficult, and after having both the kids, I suffered really badly with postnatal depression.
Oh, okay.
And it's honestly, it's my houseplants and my gardening that saved me. Really, really did. That was my escape. And even now, like being a mum, a working mum, a wife, obviously a home educator now as well, it is not easy. And I think that balance is really difficult. But my allotment really does create that balance, because it's my escape.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we started the page last year. I think it was April, might have been earlier, March, April last year. We've been documenting our journey, and I think through Instagram, I found like a community, a very
You
like-minded
have. You've had.
people.
Yeah. They all tag you, don't they? It's lovely
Yeah,
to see.
it's been amazing, and like we go to quite a lot of meetups and all the RHS shows that happen. So obviously you've got
Yeah.
Chelsea, you've got Tatton Park. This year there's the urban one as well. It's in Manchester. That's all houseplants and gardening. I think honestly gardening and allotments are becoming really, really trendy. So
Yeah.
those are becoming quite trendy as well. So we're meeting up there as well. And I think what I've really, really enjoyed about my page is the people. It's connecting with people that are just
Mm,
sort of on your level, and enjoy that passion for growing.
yeah.
And I think part of the growing our own is where me and my husband are just sort of reading more into like the food that we eat and the
Mm,
water that we drink, and the way water is managed in these country these days. And like Brexit has been a big one, the impact that Brexit has had on our food. And I think just sort of becoming a bit more clued up really in terms of what
yeah.
we're doing with our lives, and yeah, trying to save a little bit of money as well through growing our own, although you don't
Yeah.
really save a lot of money because so much money goes into it. But
Every day. Oh, I bought this. I bought this plant.
um it
Is
does
that the
become a bit
argument
of
you
an
gave when you got
obsession.
the allotment? It'll save us so much money in the long term.
But actually, funnily enough, this year I do actually want to document all the veg that I crop. And I
Right.
want to try and at the end of the year work out what it would have cost me in the supermarket. Just out of I just want to do it
Yeah.
just for me to see how much it would actually cost in the supermarket. And I think it's just that the joy it gives you from growing going to the allotment, you pick your veg, you come home. It's just a nice little process. And then involving the children in it all as well is
Yeah.
just it's amazing. Um and I've had so many questions from other home educating parents that I meet up with, like, "Oh, would you ever do like an open day at your allotment?" I was like, "Well, you can just come down whenever you want. I'm not doing like an open day." So I think in the summer we will probably open it up to home educating families, because it is such
That'll
a
be
big
lovely.
plot. Um, my passion is to get children into growing their own food from an early age, and I think I don't know where I'm gonna go with it. There is definitely something I want to do in that space. It's just finding the time to plan, and yeah, just coming up with a plan, I suppose, in how are we going to achieve what we want to do.
Mm. And one thing that's come out from conversations with other tutors, on my channel and not on my channel, is that a lot of parents that are pulling their children out of school, they want something different. They obviously want to cover English, maths, that kind of thing. But, some schools apparently online, you have to do those to be able to do all the other subjects. And I think kids are being bombarded at school because when I went to permanent and then I went to supply, and like I'd go into year one classes, and the majority of the day was phonics, English, and maths, and an hour at creativity. And families just don't want that anymore. They want something
No.
different, totally different, something
I'm
fun,
really,
fun learning.
yeah, it's the fun, and I think for me, I'm really passionate about my kids being exposed to as many different areas as possible to
Mm,
help shape what their interests are. Because I think as well, going back to what my experience was at the age of 14, you're expected to pick your options. You
mm.
have like a careers talk. And I'm like, I'm 14. I've
Oh,
barely been
no.
exposed to like what I want to do in my life. Never mind pick what what subject's going to influence my life choices. So I
Mm.
think it's really important that children are exposed to so many different areas from a young age. Like Sophia, she's obviously we've got the allotment, which is it's a family experience for us. She's got her keyboard for her music. She's also doing ballroom dancing with one of her friends now.
Ah.
So she's starting that after Easter. She loves Strictly, so I think that'll be brilliant for her. And although she doesn't enjoy woodwork and sort of designing things, I think, based on my experience, it's really important that she gets into it. So we're not pushing it on her, but her dad is very hands-on, and he's a qualified joiner. He doesn't work as a joiner, but he's a joiner and a plumber as well. Um, so she's designing things like she wants to make a playground for squirrels,
Oh,
believe it or
that's so
not.
cute.
She sees the squirrels in our garden just being absolute terrors. So she's like, let's just make them a little playground so they leave the garden alone. I was like, okay, nice thinking, Sophia. I don't think it'll work, but we can only
Yeah,
try.
I think it'll be more
So,
of a cutesy thing.
so she's basically we've said she can design the playground, tell us what she wants, and then she will make it with her dad. So it's
Well, that's
just
good.
exposing her to different areas and different fields that are just sparking that interest from quite an early age. So that when it does come to 14, 15, and she's deciding what she wants to do, sort of going forward with her life, that she has more of an idea.
Hmm.
Because I think back at honestly, my experience was at school, I wanted to be a teacher. So I did my GCSEs and then I wanted to be a geography teacher. I remember it so well.
Oh,
Because I loved my GCSE geography teacher, Mrs. White. She was amazing. And she was my idol. I wanted to be her, basically. So at A level, I did geography, law, and psychology. And I did psychology because I just thought, well, just in case I wanted to go into like something sciencey, I'll keep that as a social science. So I've got my options open. And then I did GCSE geography and I absolutely hated it. I was like, I can't be a geography teacher. And I thought, oh, I could become a lawyer because I've got my law as well. And I thought, no, I absolutely hated law. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I took a gap year after I did my A levels. And then I applied to become a midwife. So I did midwifery at uni
oh
for
wow.
3 years. Became a midwife, practiced for 18 months and hated it.
That's the thing though,
So
there's something in your life that makes you go down a certain route. Like
yeah,
families I know that have, maybe had children with special education needs or something,
yeah,
and they've wanted to pursue, research, pursue something in
yeah.
learning to help other children. So it's mad that you ask people so young, what do you want to do?
I know. And even now, like I'm 30, I have to think that how old am I? I'm 32, 33. I'm like, am I doing what I really want to do in my life? No, I'm not. And that's what I don't like about the system is that we expect children to know that this, at the age of 14, where are you going to be in 20, 30 years
Mm.
time? And I just think the way the world is as well, there are so many more options available to children than this traditional sort of career pathway that the education system sells to them.
Mm. There's children who have already got careers like online, and
Yeah.
they're doing a lot better than their parents.
Yeah, I know.
And we could have never, we don't even know what the future jobs will be, the way the AI is going and everything. We don't
Yeah.
know whether people will work,
Yeah.
whether we'll have
Yeah.
to even work and whether we'll be able to just Live. I don't
Live
know.
off the land.
Live off the
That's the
land
dream.
like the olden days.
I think as well, the other thing about like the education system is we know that, you know, net zero, the country has got targets to hit. We've agreed to hitting certain targets by, I think it's 2030. We know from the weather, the way the weather is changing, that climate change is
A
a real
lot of
thing.
change.
But there is just not enough focus, I don't think, in the education system. And I mean, I tried so hard with my daughter's school because my passion is there. I even offered them my time to go in to sort of like prepare eco days and
Oh
spark
wow.
children's interest. I mean, I do go in and do quite a lot of gardening with the children. They
Do you
just
do
weren't
that now? Do
interested.
you still go in now?
Yeah, so I still do it because I think, you know, just because my children get it at home, some children, like a lot of my daughter's friends, will come home and they're like, I love your house plants. Can we come to your allotment? Sophia talks about the allotment all the time. Can we come and have a look at your allotment? And I just think, absolutely, you know, the more children that are exposed to it, the better. And I think just because parents don't have that interest doesn't mean the child should miss out. So I just feel as though me as a parent, and if Sophia's friends are interested, you know, just bring them along and they can have a
Yeah.
little play day at the allotment. Um, so yeah, so I just think for me, a lot of schools, and it's not all schools, some schools, you know, do it really well. They just don't have the priorities in the right place. And again, I think it's just schools are in a difficult position because there are so many, you know, like different tick boxes that they need to hit so many milestones and they need to have so much of a certain subject. There is a lot of pressure on schools, but I just think there's just not enough focus for me on sustainability and the future world and climate change.
I do, yeah. The focus is so much on English, maths, and science. I remember as a nursery teacher being asked to predict grades for year six. So if I said that they were on track, then they had to be on track in year six. And I'm not like they said it to me, and I was like, so what if something major happens throughout their
Yeah.
time at school? Because there were children that unfortunately lost parents,
Yeah.
or there was, they suffered illnesses, or something happened, they just were having a bad year, maybe.
Yeah.
So how the things that are being asked of teachers of schools are ridiculous, to be honest, because you
Yeah.
can't predict, we learned that with lockdown, you can't predict the future. And there's a lot of focus on not necessarily the right things, like you say, but
Yeah.
there
I
we
mean,
go.
like I think of myself, like in your job, you can have a bad year in a job, and you
Yeah.
know that puts you off track, like where you want to go with your career. And I just think that that's life, and I think we should be thinking of children like that in schools as well. Not every child is going to have a great, you know, Monday to Friday through
No.
all throughout their academic year. It's just not going to happen. You know, they have emotions too. They've got feelings as well, and I think
Yeah.
we just don't do enough of recognizing that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been lovely to chat to you. Thank you very much for giving me your time. And it was lovely to find out your perspective from a parent's perspective. It's been really interesting. And thank you very much. If you liked today's video, make sure to subscribe to see who else I'm chatting to. If you are also a home ed parent or linked to home education, please get in touch and I'd love to chat to you.